Hey, everybody, welcome to Snack Size DFS. I'm Dan Bespris, just here to introduce you to the proceedings and to remind you that this program is brought to you by our friends at Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. They've got the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA and college basketball, NHL and UFC. Bet Online, your number one sports betting source for the new year. They've got touchdowns. Uh, Everything freezing up on my computer, but I guess it's okay. They've got touchdowns, three-pointers, hat tricks. They've got you covered on every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online. The game starts here. That was not my best ad read, but guess what? Bet Online doesn't care because they're the best, and they're so cool for working with us as long as they have. Please do check them out immediately. Meantime, I want to throw it over to my boy Brenton Eckersley, who's going to break down the DFS card for all of you guys on this Thursday slate. It's a nice, solid Thursday. That's not always the case. We got a 9-gamer coming up for you guys to work with. Plenty of angles to attack on this Thursday slate, and Brenton does such an amazing job of giving you all the spots to focus your energies so that you guys can come up with a win. Brenton, it's all you, my man.
Hi guys, welcome into another episode of Snack Size DFS. My name's Brenton Eckersley. I am your host for this condensed, bite-sized, snack-sized version of the DraftKings slate. Thank you, Dan, as always, and glad to hear you feeling better, mate. Had a pretty rough time of it with the flu over there, I hear. So good to see the Old Man Squad network back and firing. I've been off for a few days as well. Had a little beach holiday with my son and his mate, which was awesome. South Australia has amazing beaches. Not much else down here, but yeah, pretty good holiday. Good to be back though. We're going to break down the DraftKings slate for Thursday, the 23rd of January. If you haven't been into Snack Size DFS before, then welcome. What we do here is a condensed version. We try to keep these pods and videos as short as possible. I do all the work for you. And just so that you know, I do record early. We record around about a day before the actual slate opens, but there is plenty of news to work with. I tend to hold on as long as I can, and also like I said, lots of news to work with, and if I recorded, the day of, basically there wouldn't be enough time for you guys to really get through the video and start thinking about your base. In fact, you've probably already started thinking about your base lineups and things like that. So we record early. There's plenty of news, questionables, probables, doubtfuls, and outs. I go through all of that for you in anticipation of what might happen on the next day's slate. As I said, it's the 23rd of January slate. DraftKings have 8 games on the main card. They've skipped the Indiana-San Antonio game for this one. There are 9 games in total for the day, but we're looking at the main 8-game card. And here we go. Our first page here is game notes, just some quick notes on pace of games and also some pace bumps. So the 2 faster games for Thursday are the Toronto and Atlanta game. That doesn't have a game total yet, but the Sacramento-Denver game does, and that's certainly fast or expected to be fast at 240 points game total, denoted by the little green icon there on the right hand side, and you'll see that pop up in future slides. The slower games, Portland Trailblazers at Orlando. There's no game total there, but Orlando are basically the slowest paced team in the league this season. Boston at Lakers, I can't imagine that being too quick either. No game total there yet though. Pace bump, so this is where we look at teams that are going to receive a game total bump or a pace bump, speed of game bump, based on who they're playing against. So Golden State Warriors, not a particularly fast team, but they're playing Chicago, who just run up and down the floor the whole game, so they'll receive a pace bump. And Sacramento will actually receive a pace bump versus Denver. Denver very quick here this season. That's the Russell Westbrook effect, I guess, and you'll see that denoted by the purple arrow down there on the right hand side, which will pop up when relevant. Attack and stack, this page is looking at teams that are playing against porous defenses and also NBA teams that give up plenty of fantasy points. Orlando are playing Portland. Portland just give up points everywhere. Atlanta and Toronto, both of those teams give up plenty of fantasy points at the moment, so you can look at either team going back the other way. Golden State, we've already seen a pace bump there versus Chicago, and Chicago are one of the most porous DFS teams in the league as well for DK points, and also the Clippers taking on Washington, who suck generally and are giving up fantasy points everywhere. So we've got 8 games to get into. Let's dive into the first slide. Portland at Orlando. As mentioned, this is going to be a slow game. We have back-to-backs throughout this slate, so just keep an eye on that icon on the left-hand side. The back-to-back for Portland is actually starting on Thursday and going into Friday. At the moment, we have DeAndre Ayton, Tamani Kamara, and Anthony Simons questionable. Klingon is out. Scoot Henderson at 6,600. I like this price for Scoot. His minutes are 30 plus in the last 5 games, and we also have Simons questionable, so that's a decent price for Scoot Henderson. Shaden Sharp at 5,800 if Simons and or Kamara sit is not a bad cash play. Danny Avdia, I love this price, 6,900. He's coming off 4 out of 5 to 40 plus DK points. So with Ayton questionable as well, that's a great play, Danny Avdia. Taking on Orlando, even though they are a tough defense, I like that price for Avdia. Some other plays you can look at here, but don't really do it for me too much. Jeremy Grant at 5,100. It's just too cheap for Jeremy Grant. He's been in and out of the lineup, obviously. If he plays, it's just too cheap, really, especially if Simons or Kamara sit. We also have to watch the back-to-back, though, because Jeremy Grant may just sit out again. For the Magic, taking on the porous Portland, the porous Portland Trailblazers, the porous Blazers. Yes, sorry. On the injury report so far, we have Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, Franz Wagner questionable, so Wagner coming back in soon. We have Goga as doubtful, and we have Jalen Suggs as out. This is all versus Portland, so we can expect some decent bumps here in scoring. Wendell Carter Jr. is a pretty easy play with Goga. Doubtful, if Goga doesn't play, you can lock in Wendell Carter Jr. at 6,300. Paolo Banchero back now for a number of games, 8,400. It's a great price for Paolo. He got up to 32 minutes in the last game, so that's what we needed to see. It was kind of under 30 for the last 4 or 5 games before that. Now he's back up to 32 minutes plus. 8,400 is a good price for Banchero versus the Blazers. And also Cole Anthony, who is questionable, 6,500. He would be a cash play. He's been more of a 30 to somewhere between 30 to 40 DK point scorer. With Banchero back, that though, it does limit Cole Anthony's upside. And also just the GPP swing at the fence down the bottom there. Anthony Black at 5,400. He's getting a steady price rise now. This is an okay play, probably cash play if Cole Anthony does actually sit. Moving on to Game 2, the Toronto Raptors taking on Atlanta in Atlanta. We expect this to be a fast game total, so more fantasy points on offer here, hopefully. Ochai Agbaji is questionable, and we know that Emmanuel Quickley is out. I actually don't like Barnes or Barrett or Grady Dick in this matchup. I just think they're appropriately priced for what they've been giving up and what they could potentially do. It's a couple of the lower price guys here for Toronto that I actually have my eye on. It's Bruce Brown at 3,900. He's a GPP play, especially if Agbaji can't play. If Agbaji is in, then Brown probably just becomes a cash play. If you need to dive down to that lower basement price kind of guy to fit in some of the studs, then yeah, Bruce Brown's a decent option. Kelly Olynyk, he's more of a cash play, doesn't have huge upside. Again, if Agbaji is out, there's minutes up for grabs. 3,700 is a decent cash play. And then your GPP kind of dart throws, I call them pinata plays, which I always refer to as swinging a toothpick at a pinata with a blindfold on in a dark room. Look, it's something that may not happen. That's why we call them GPP plays. They're for tournaments only. Davion Mitchell at 3,800. Or Jamal Shed. Don't play them both. 3,200 for Shed. Don't play them both in the same lineup. And yeah, it's again that case of, do you need someone really cheap? These guys could hit a ceiling score any given night with Emmanuel Quickley out. Atlanta are on a back-to-back here. They're going Wednesday, basically the time of me recording this, into Thursday on the back-to-back. Jalen Johnson was, I reckon, upgraded to in before I recorded this, and Trey is probable. Both of those designations are for the Wednesday game, so just keep an eye on the news for the Thursday games. Jalen Johnson probably more likely to sit than Trae Young on a back-to-back at the moment, so keep an eye out. Trae himself, 9,600, that's a price drop, and it's after putting up scores of 60, 58, and 46 DK points. So cool, thanks DraftKings. We'll play that every single time. He's one of the good high price guys on the board tonight, and obviously playing against Toronto, who give up fantasy points everywhere. Jalen Johnson, as I mentioned, questionable for Wednesday. I think he was ruled in, just can't quite remember at the moment. I don't have my phone open in front of me. But 8,600, he's had a couple of poor shooting nights recently as he works himself back into form. So there's a good spot for a bounce back here. Out of the two, I'd probably play Trae. But yeah, Jalen Johnson at 8,600 is always in play. And of course, Onyeka Okongwu, there's a few fantasy darlings that have just raised their heads due to other people's injuries and just getting a starting nod. And we've already talked about Wendell Carter Jr. We can also talk about Daniel Gafford. We can talk about Onyeka Okongwu, and we can talk about Keller Ware. Guess what position they all play? Yeah, center is a very valuable spot right now for DFS. So Okongwu at 5,600, he's starting. We call that an eat the chalk play. Everybody's probably going to have him. He's going to have high ownership, but sometimes you just have to eat that chalk and go with it. Moving on to Miami at Milwaukee. Tyler Hero has come up as probable after missing one or two games. I want to say one game. And Butler has been suspended again. Jimmy, what are you doing? We know what you're doing. You're trying to get out of Miami. That's what you're doing. There's also the little issue here with Bam Adebayo in that the minutes have been quite low in the last two games, which coincides with Keller Ware starting the second half 2 games ago and then starting outright. So I'm not too worried about that. Just keep an eye on it. 22 and 25 minutes, I think, for Bam in the last 2, but one of those may have been blowout related. So look, it's just something to keep an eye on. I'm not too worried about it at this stage. With Butler suspended, Tyler Hero becomes an excellent play at 8,300. He's basically going to do everything for this Miami team. In fact, if you look down the right-hand side there, so much of this has to do with Jimmy out now. Nikola Jovic at 5,300 with Butler out. Duncan Robinson at 5,100. I absolutely love this play. Butler out. And also the fact that they're now starting Keller Ware means that they need a little bit more spacing for guys taking open shots. And guess who does that? It's Duncan Robinson. So he's one of my fave plays today at 5,100. And of course, the fantasy darling of the week, Keller Ware at 5,700. That's actually a $1,500 DK price rise, a $1,500 DK price rise. I'm not so sure I've seen one that large before in the space of one game, but it's obvious that it needed to be done, and it's still way too cheap. So 42 and 45 DK points for Ware in his last 2. 5,700 is smash territory. Eat that chalk. Jaime Jaquez Jr. needs to be looked at 5K. He's capable of big things when Butler is out. Also, he's more of a GPP play for me. I would rather play Jovic and Robinson rather than Jaime Jaquez. Milwaukee Bucks are on a back-to-back. They have their back-to-back going Wednesday, Thursday. Giannis and Middleton are both probable for today's game. Look, it's usually the same thing when we talk about the Bucks. If Lillard is out, then you could definitely play Giannis a lot stronger, and the other way around, if Giannis is out, then Lillard just about becomes a lock at that $8,000 to $9,000 DK price. 8,500 for Dame here. Again, I'm not playing him unless Giannis sits, and I'm not really looking at Giannis here unless Dame sits on the back-to-back. Bobby Portis, though, at 5,100. Middleton is probable. Look, if Middleton doesn't go for some reason, then I like Bobby Portis at 5,100. He'll get the minutes bump, and I also don't mind a stab at Brook Lopez here. Sorry about that. 5,200 minutes back up to 30 plus in the last 2 or 3 games. He's much better if Middleton sits as well. Both teams in the next game on a back-to-back. Dallas at OKC. OKC are a hard team to match up against defensively. They're very good, so they tend to restrict DK points, but there's still a few guys here to look at. Dallas on the back-to-back today and Thursday. Najee and Clay were out Wednesday, and we now know that Derek Lively is injured for a long time, a month minimum, I would say. Spencer Dinwiddie actually came off the bench today on Wednesday, which is interesting. He would be a cash play only, and just watch the back-to-back for Kyrie Irving. I have no real interest in Kyrie Irving at his price today versus a tough OKC defense. Daniel Gafford, though, I've already mentioned him, 5,500. Derek Lively's done for weeks. Eat the chalk play. So there's so many centre eat the chalk plays here today. You can basically take your pick. Quentin Grimes at 4,900. He actually started today over Dinwiddie, which was an interesting development coming back off of injury. Watch Najee Marshall and Klay Thompson on the back-to-back. Grimes started, but if either of those guys come back in, he's likely to just go back to a bench role. So 4,900 is not a bad play if one of Najee and Klay are out. On the back-to-back again, Wednesday, Thursday, OKC, J-Dub, or Jalen Williams, we'll call them J-Dub and J-Will. J-Dub for Jalen Williams. He was ruled in today on the Wednesday. Just watch the back-to-back. If he's had any kind of injury niggle, he may rest on the Thursday. We know that Hartenstein's out, and we also know that Isaiah Joe is out for Thursday. SGA at 10.5. Look, the dude's always in play. I like him much better if J-Dub sits. Jalen Williams, we'll call him J-Will, 5,300. He's coming off 31 and 27 minutes in his last two. I wasn't really sure that was the way that OKC were going to go with Hartenstein out, but they have played him the last couple of games, so he would be a GPP play at 5,300. Kaysen Wallace, 4,600. I believe he got ruled out today after I made this slide. So if he comes back in, he would be a decent play if you have either SGA or J-Dub sit on the Thursday back-to-back. The other one is Isaiah Joe. Actually, no, it was Isaiah Joe ruled out today at 4K. I'm pretty sure Kaysen Wallace was still in. If he can play tomorrow and SGA or J-Dub sit, then again, it's a nice little GPP pinata play, dart throw, whatever you want to call it. Kaysen Wallace, Isaiah Joe, don't play them both in the same lineup. You're likely to have one go off and get 30 minutes and the other ones stick around 22 minutes. So that's the way I play those guys. Sacramento at Denver. I'm having some yips with the speech today. Apologies. We'll get through it though. This is going to be one of the fastest games of the day. The Sacramento Kings taking on the Nuggets. De'Aaron Fox at 8,400. Look, this is the floor for De'Aaron Fox. It's a pace-up game. Denver playing very fast this season, as I mentioned. Like that price for De'Aaron Fox. Malik Monk, though, at 7K. This is way too cheap for a guy who's beat this price in 6 of his last 7 games and not beat it just. He's beating it by scoring over 40 DK points on a regular basis. Another one of my favourite plays today. Domantas Sabonis, 10K. This is the floor. It's a pace-up game. It's not one of the best plays on the card for me, but he is still in play. If you can't get to someone like Jokic or Giannis at those 12K pricing areas, then Domantas Sabonis is not going to burn you. He just may be around that value, 50 DK points or thereabout. Keegan Murray's a cash play at 5K at the moment, but I still prefer Malik Monk at 7K. Whoops, let's go back there. Just skipped ahead too quickly. Denver Nuggets taking on Sacramento. So Nikola Jokic, he's questionable for this game. He's at 12-2 at the moment. He's always in play. It's a 240 game total. It's going to be fast. So there's no reason you can't play him. I'm just not listing him in my favourite plays. I think we have better options. Russell Westbrook at 6,200. Too cheap. He's played in 5 blowouts in the last 6 games, I think. So therefore had some pretty low minutes. We need to be careful, though, because it coincides with Aaron Gordon coming back in. Aaron Gordon's only getting about 22 to 23 minutes a night, but is that eating into Westbrook's minutes? Yeah, that's highly possible. I don't mind the play, though, at 6,200. It's still too cheap for Beastbrook. Jamal Murray, 7,200. He's a GPP play. He had 2 of 7 field goals. So not only did he miss a stack of his shots, he only took 7 field goals attempts versus Philly, which is really weird. His field goal attempts are generally anywhere between 15 and 25 shot attempts per game. So that price of 7,200 is a pretty tasty one for Jamal Murray versus the Kings. Your GPP in a fast game is Christian Brown. I'm not that interested in it, and I'm certainly not chasing the Julian Strother game in any way, shape, or form. Moving on to Chicago and the Golden State Warriors, we have the Sunmu questionable, we have White questionable. I have a feeling that White is probably closer to doubtful here. I love the price for Nikola Vucevic here at 8,200. It's the floor for Vuce. That 40 to 45 DK point is the floor. So he has 55 to 60 point DK upside. And we know that the Golden State Warriors are not the same defensive team that they used to be. Zach LaVine at 8,200. That's a price drop, and it's a nice price for Zach LaVine. Look, it's probably a cash play. He doesn't seem to have the ceiling this year. We know that Kobe White is doubtful, so there's probably more usage and shot attempts for Zach LaVine here. 8,200, a decent play. Josh Giddey at 7,100. I really like this one. GPP, he's bouncing around a little bit like a yo-yo, but with the Sumnu questionable, White probably not playing. I like Josh Giddey at 7,100. He has some serious DK upside at that price. And if we know that White can't go, or even Desumnu can't go, then Lonzo Ball at 4,400 is a decent low price. Cash play. Moving on to the Warriors. This is a back-to-back for these guys. They're playing today. Let's see what happens with the lineup tomorrow. We already know that Kyle Anderson, Draymond Green, and Pods Pajemski, just keep it at Pods to save space there, are all out on Wednesday. We'll see what happens with those guys Thursday. Don't expect Draymond to play. Steph Curry at 8,800. It's another one of these guys that you can never count out. He's had a couple of poor three-point shooting games in the last two, 4 of 12 and 4 of 14. Now, if he can bump those up to, 6 or 7 of 14 and 12, then we are going to see a ceiling game from Steph Curry, and I like the 8,800 price, given that he is playing Chicago. Andrew Wiggins at 6,100. He had 24 minutes out in his last game, which was a serious blowout versus Boston. He also shot 1 from 11. So there's a nice chance for a bounce back there for Andrew Wiggins at 6,100. Kevon Looney getting minutes with Draymond out, so 4,100 is a cash play. Moses Moody is probably more of a GPP play. 3,900, I do like that price for Moody with 25, 29 and 32 minutes in his last 3 games with Draymond out. Moving on to the Celtics taking on the Lakers in a bit of a marquee matchup. The Lakers still a marquee team. I guess they've got those two guys, so they must be. This is probably going to be a slow game. Boston on the back-to-back, again, playing Wednesday today, also playing Thursday, and we always have to watch the news with Boston when that happens. Any back-to-back for Boston is fraught with danger in terms of who plays and who doesn't. Drew Holiday, Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis questionable on the Wednesday at the time of recording. We have to watch those guys for this Thursday slate. I really like the price of Jaylen Brown regardless. If one of those guys, particularly Porzingis, if he sits, then 7,800 for Jaylen Brown's a great price. He's had a couple of poor shooting nights, keeping his scores low. Still capable of anything. Still capable of 45 to 50, 55 DK points. It's a decent stab for Jaylen Brown at 7,800. Kristaps Porzingis himself, 6,900. If he plays, if you think the Lakers can keep it close, because I tell you what, if there's any type of blowout, then it's going to be Kristaps, the first guy yanked out of the game. So if you think it stays close with the Lakers, 6,900 is a great price for Porzingis. And if Porzingis can't go on the back-to-back, Al Horford at 4,600 is always going to be the slot in play there. I actually like Peyton Pritchard at 5K. If anybody sits, generally he's been a bit of a yo-yo roller coaster ride for the past 6 weeks or so. He's hard to get right, but I still like to play Peyton Pritchard when anyone sits. And if Porzingis is out, then Luke Cornett will also get a bump at 4,400. Again, that's your bottom of the barrel. I need to play somebody at this price kind of play. He wouldn't be the first guy to slot into my lineup by any means. On the Lakers side of the ball, no real injury report here. I think AD and LeBron are both appropriately priced, so I'm not really interested in them versus Boston. The one guy I have a sneaky bit of interest in is Austin Reeves at 8K. The guy can just go off for 55, 65 DK points on his day. Against Boston, that's probably not likely. No real interest in what's going on for the Lakers there. No real interest in the ancillary pieces either. I think I'll just pass on most of them. Austin Reeves would be the only guy I slot into some lineups. Last game of the day, Washington at the Clippers. So, Bilal Coulibaly, 5,600. Has been a little bit poor lately. We like to see his last game where I think he scored 40 DK points plus, 5,600. If Bilal can keep it going. That's a nice GPP play. Jordan Poole at 6,900. It's just too cheap for Jordan Poole, right? 6,900, yeah, he hasn't been the same guy we've seen in seasons past, but I like him for a GPP play here as a bounce back against the Clippers. He's had some poor shooting nights, again, like Steph Curry. If Jordan Poole can get it going, then 6,900 is not a problem. In fact, he could get there just in points. Alex Sarr, I have some medium interest in at 5,500. He's more of a cash play every night. And Keyshawn George sit at 3,800, got it done last game nicely. Can he keep it rolling as well? Here's your pinata play for the Washington Wizards. The Clippers on a back-to-back, and heaps of news today in this Wednesday game. We have Kawhi Leonard, Norm Powell, Ivica Zubac, and James Harden all out. So what that probably means is most of those guys are going to come back in on Thursday's games. We need to keep an eye on the news. I'll set you guys up, as I said, build you a base, get you thinking about what you might want to do. You must keep an eye on the news for teams like this, though. Norm Powell, out Wednesday, 7,400. I love that price if Powell plays, but Kawhi doesn't. If Kawhi plays, no real interest in Norm Powell. James Harden is questionable. No, he was listed out already today. 9,500 dollars versus Washington. I love that price for James Harden, especially versus Washington. As you can see there, he put up 65 DK points on them earlier this season. I love it even more if Kawhi Leonard can't go. Ivica Zubac out Wednesday, 7,200 again, too cheap versus Washington. I love to play against the Washington centers and also the Portland centers. Zubac is in play if he is out there on Thursday. And then we have the little washing machine, as I like to call it. We don't really know who's going to go here or go off here. It could be any one of these guys on the wings for the Clippers if we have Powell out, if we have Kawhi out. It's Derek Jones Jr., 4,600. Kevin Porter Jr., 4,400. Amir Coffey, 4,300. Not my favourite plays of the game. Again, sometimes we just have to land on lower price guys. But if you can tell me which of those Clippers guys is going to go off on any given night, please drop it in the comments. I'd like to know how you work that out. My favourite plays for Thursday, the 23rd of January. Paolo Banchero versus Portland, Trae Young versus Toronto, and Onyeka Okongwu versus Toronto. I love the price for Kelly Ware versus Milwaukee. Daniel Gafford at OKC. Malik Monk versus Denver. Josh Giddey versus Golden State Warriors, especially if we have Desumnu and White out. Ivica Zubac versus Washington Centers, and Harden versus Washington in general. That was a slightly long one, guys. 8 games to get through and a lot of news that dropped this morning, my time, to get through. Hope that is beneficial for you guys. The idea here is to set up a platform, set up a base for you guys. You guys continue to watch the news for me and get your lineups drilled down in the last couple of hours before tip tomorrow. My name is Brenton Eckersley. As I mentioned, you can find me on Twitter at Terrain72 and on Blue Sky at terrain72.bsky.social. Please like and subscribe to the Old Man Squad Network. Dan and I are out here working hard for you guys to bring you all the fantasy plays that you could possibly hope for. Dan on the regular season side of things and me on the DFS side of things. Another episode of Snack Size DFS in the books. Thanks for listening, guys. Back to you, Dan, in the studio.
Thank you, Brenton. And thank you to UnderdogFantasy.com. This is the perfect time to go check them out. Use our promo code OLDMAN, OLDMAN, when you sign up for a 50% deposit match bonus up to $1,000 and a free play on the first card that you fill out. Pretty good, because you're just picking higher and lower. And if they give you one for free, you have just boosted your odds considerably, because you can make a card with just 2 plays on it, and one of them is the gimme. Or you could go nuts. You could do a card with 4 or 5 plays where one of them is the gimme if you want to, try to shoot the moon on your very first try. Go nuts. And here's the beauty part. By the way, again, you can use the link in the show description, or you can use our promo code OLDMAN. Brenton has just given you a primer for all the places to look for your underdog fantasy entry. He's told you all the guys that are expected to have good ball games and all the guys that are expected to have bad ones. I would, by the way, if I were you, I would hunt down the guys that Brenton said to avoid. Everybody always wants all the hires They're like, oh, yeah, I got to get the hires. I want to root for guys to score. I need everybody to do stuff. I got to go higher, higher. You can get better odds by taking the lower side of those projections, and Brenton's got you set up for those as well. I'm so glad that you guys get to play along with us on this. Play along with me, play along with Brenton at underdogfantasy.com, the newest partner here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Thank you to Brenton, Terrain72 on social media. I'm Dan, a representative of Old Man Squad. I mean, I founded the place. Love you guys. Like, rate, and subscribe on your way out. Again, shout out to Brenton for another amazing show. We'll see you guys soon.